Are,
Just
are we live, you guys? I think we're live. We had a little hiccup. So if you don't mind putting in the chat just a little hi, you're live. We hear you. I think we are. And I just want to welcome everybody. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jennifer Diamond. I'm a certified plant-based nutrition coach, and I am living a whole food, plant-based, SOFAS-free, gluten-free lifestyle for health and well-being. And I'm doing this because it literally gave me my life back. And I know that you're live. We hear you. I think we are. And I just want to welcome everybody. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. That's what happens when we're live. But I was saying that I know it can help you as well. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, hit the subscribe button. And if you have, I just want to thank you. I have a beautiful guest here today. I'm super excited to welcome a truly special someone who has an incredible story of overcoming her own incredible health conditions. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you've been dealing with that for over 32 years. Her story is truly inspiring, and you can check it out from an earlier live episode on my channel. So please help me welcome all the way from Australia, my friend Skye Conway. Hi, Skye. Welcome back. How are you?
I'm good. Always so warm and fun. So thank you so much for having me in that beautiful introduction.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Skye and I met through one of the bundles, and through, some conversations. Skye thought that it would be valuable to get on here and talk about both of our experiences with iron. I know I've struggled with low iron. I've been diagnosed with anemia, and keeping my iron stores at a healthy level had been very difficult. And so, would you like to share a little bit about your story to start with, Skye?
Sure. So if you don't know my story, my name's Skye, so thanks for the introduction. I was sick for 32 years, all kind of general things that now fall under what you'd call mast cell activation syndrome. But I had like congenital diseases, POTS, tachycardia, fibromyalgia, my liver was failing. But to bring it up to speed on this topic of iron, because I think a lot of people suffer with iron problems. And when it comes to my story, I'd already been sick with chronic pain and lots of surgeries, and my iron stores in my 20s wouldn't stay up. And then they found out I had a bleed. And unfortunately, I was bleeding, but nobody knew. So I'm taking massive doses of iron, which change your feces to a dark color, which cover an internal bleed, which is kind of scary in itself. And then I had to have, it's a pretty traumatic what happened, but I had to have my stomach, duodenum, and top of intestines removed. And I remember waking up from that surgery and the doctor saying to me, from now on, you will have to have iron infusions for the rest of your life. Now, I was already sick, not just with this. I had chronic pain and this congenital disease. So I went on to have many more surgeries, but literally every 3 months, 2 to 3 months, up until I went raw vegan, I had to have iron infusions. And my blood work was not good until I went raw vegan. But mind you, when you hear this story, please know that actually the biggest shock when I healed myself with raw foods to a doctor was, how did you heal your anemia? And yeah, so we can talk more about that. But I love your story when you told me, Jennifer. Do you want to share about a bit about your iron?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would like to just say, you mentioned some of the pieces, part of us that were removed. If you're not familiar with those terms, Skye basically doesn't have a stomach, and certain parts, they were removed. And so it's when the doctor tells you you're going to have these infusions, it's because the way, I guess, that we normally would absorb, you're missing those parts. Is that right?
Yes. So I don't have the parts to absorb iron. So I'm not only in a deficit because I'm sick and I've been through a lot, I'm in a deficit because I'm actually missing the parts of the stomach and the intestines which absorb iron. So it made sense. It was no brainer that I kept turning up at the doctor's office within 3 months and everything tanked, everything dropped. My iron, ferritin stores, low hemoglobin at times, but mostly it was low iron.
Yeah, that I just wanted to point out because no wonder the doctors were shocked, and the power of real whole foods, and in your case 100% raw. I mean, for whatever reason, however it did that, we can get into it more, was able to help you in that way. And so, and for me, it's a lot different because I didn't have those kinds of surgeries. But before I get into that, I just want to say hello to Jill and Tanya, who are in the chat, and everyone else that is here. And if you guys have any questions or comments, or you want to share anything, please do in the comments, and we will do our best to make sure that we address it or share, because that's part of what's so much fun about Alive, is being able to interact with you guys. And so, I have always been looking for the healthiest way to live, and not really, going way back, a long story, but trying different things that were the hype, and always being sick, always having chronic inflammation, always having just always on medication. And so when I finally stumbled upon veganism, which was the first part of this journey for me in terms of getting rid of animal products and dairy and things like that, I didn't really understand how to balance, and like how it's different, right? Because when I think about the standard diet and you think of your plate, you've got your vegetable and your salad, and then this big piece of protein, animal product. Well, so long story short, I was vegan and I thought I was doing really great, and I remember walking my dog feeling all the time like I feel like I'm just going to fall over. I felt like I was just going to fall over, to the point where I would look around on the streets for cars or people, thinking, if I do like black out or fall over, who could I alert, And so eventually I went to the emergency room, and they tested me. And finally the ER doctor said, your iron, ferritin, which is the stores of the iron. There are different types of iron. Hemoglobin, you mentioned, Skye, and there's also hematocrit. I always say that wrong, but hopefully I said it right. But my iron stores were so low. I mean, 3 was my stores for ferritin. And what I learned is that for our laboratory, they wanted it at 40. So, and I can go into more if you want, about how the doctor, what the conversation was, but that's kind of what led me to realizing that I was anemic.
That's, amazing. Were you vegan at that time?
I was vegan at that time. I was not whole food plant-based. I didn't know that term yet. But so I wasn't really eating the right amounts, I don't believe. And so instead of eating things that were filled with the right nutrients, I might have air popcorn instead, so I didn't really understand how I needed to balance. But at any rate, I will say, when I was in the ER, the doctor came in and he said, let's talk about what you're eating. And I just want to say that I know people that eat standard American diet or the standard diet, and they're deficient in iron. So it's not only a thing with whole foods. It could be any type of eating program or eating lifestyle. And he said to me, I want you to go and eat an egg. Now, first of all, eggs don't even have iron. That wouldn't be the high iron thing to choose. But, that just goes to show you he didn't really have the nutritional background. And so he said, if you don't eat an egg, you're going to come back here and you're going to have a blood transfusion. And he was getting angry with me because I'm like, I'm sorry, but I can't eat an egg. I can't eat an egg. It was this whole thing. And, but he was kind of frustrated with me, didn't really know what to do with me. And I felt kind of not threatened, but I just felt like, wow, this is really serious. I have to, I didn't want to, who wants a blood transfusion? So that was the beginning of a long, drawn out story. But, I, I did end up going on a lot of supplements, over the counter ones at Costco, all the way to when I saw a whole food plant-based diet, our doctor, he had me do this, which I still have. This is Floridex, and this is an iron and herb liquid supplement, and it is made out of all whole foods. And there was someone, Tanya, in the chat that said she just got this. And you know what? I whatever you guys do, I think is great, and you got to try everything because everyone's different. But for me, I took that for many years. Nothing changed for me. What changed was when I went to True North and I did a water fast, and I was deficient when I got there. And I had a 14-day water fast with a 7-day refeed, and they do your blood. And at the end, the doctor there said, well, your iron stores are normal. And I'm like, what do you mean? I haven't had anything to eat in 14 days. How does that happen? And he couldn't explain it. He just said to me, well, it was in there. So Skye and I have these really crazy, unique stories about not having the right, parts to digest and not eating. So how is it that we were able to get our iron in level? What do you think, Skye?
Okay, so I want everyone to, especially when I first went raw, so much changed, including I'm literally near death. I'd just been out of hospital. I was vegan. My blood stopped making proteins. My liver was failing. I was bleeding from all sorts of places on my body. Within a few weeks of being raw, just 6, all my symptoms were gone. But not only that, for the first time in like years and years and years and years, like over 15 years, my blood work, all the levels were starting to normalize. And I was eating raw food, and you're talking about True North. So you've literally fasted, okay? So there's nothing entering your mouth. In my case, I ate raw very simply. So there was no gourmet, there was no dehydrator, no blender. I'm talking about a bit of celery. Feel like carrot, eat a bit of carrot. It'd be like living outside. At night was greens, lemon juice, avocado, some ginger and garlic. We're not talking about anything really from a packet. We're just talking about like becoming an animal really, and eating food. And I think what's really important is that discovery of that we are our microbiome. Like we are literally trillions of cells in our body are our microbiome. So I believe we've evolved because we became weak in the world that we live in. And we are lucky that bacteria, then we had this symbiotic relationship where this bacteria will eat probiotics and prebiotics, but prebiotics are the fibers in a lot of the foods that I'm talking about that have not been altered. So put the bacteria back in the world. They don't want cooked carrots or cooked onions. They want the fibers from what is like their natural environment. So you give them that, and we really are showing nutrition levels based on what our microbiome is doing, not so much what we're doing. And like, if you look back, I did paleo, which I did a lot of fruit, nuts, cooked veggies, salad, and a meat dish at night. And I was looking good. If you saw photos, there was a year I did kind of well. And I needed iron infusions every 3 months that year. So back to being raw vegan, I'm eating, like, I got rid of everything. So like I got rid of, not everything, I got rid of like salt and spices and nuts and seeds, because essentially they're not like meat. I think I just had this intuition that came over me, especially when I started to get better. I threw everything I knew out. So I studied psychology at university for 5 years. None of that got me well. I used to read and watch YouTube and experts. None of it got me well. When I actually had FND when I got well, which is a functional neurological disorder, I couldn't really walk or talk for a long period. I went to a neurological hospital, learnt to redo things, but everything was very simple. I couldn't even get on and see what I was doing as a raw vegan. And what happened is I threw everything I knew out because I just felt incredible. This electricity was running through my body. I was clear. I was focused. My blood work, I only went to the doctor once, was much better, but it was mostly people looking at me saying, you look like a completely different person. Your eyes are blue, your hair's growing back. And I'm not having any nuts or seeds either at this time, just only fat is avocado. 1 year later, I went to that doctor's office. My liver was almost healed. All my blood work proteins had come back up and I was not anemic. And the doctor looked at me and he's like, out of everything that healed, he's like, how is this possible? You're missing the actual organs which absorb iron. And to me, throwing out everything I'd been taught was my savior. But you have to, I think what I want to say about doing what I did is I felt good every single day. A lot of people get onto a raw diet and they tend to think I feel sick because I'm detoxing and I've got to adjust. None of that. If I ate what I felt like, I felt like beetroot. Skye, have your beetroot, no cooked. How do I get it down? I'll mash it up with some cauliflower and I feel like some avocado. It was literally, Skye, you decide. You can't get online. And I believe I believe there's two things going on here is you put a supplement into a system. And I saw Dr. Brooke Goldner talks about this. And she had someone who healed iron deficiency eating her way of life, which is a lot of spinach, a lot of greens. And he had his blood test and all of a sudden his iron's through the roof. And she said, are you still supplementing? And he said, yes. And when he stopped, he had perfect iron. And that is a very natural diet as well. I did like these Dr. Brooke Goldner diets, have a lot of lemon juice, which is vitamin C, which you need for the uptake of iron, and a lot of spinach. But I never went out to heal my iron. I was so sick. There were so many aspects. It wouldn't be possible for a human to hyper-focus on one of them. But back to absorbing nutrients, I believe that the supplements, anything processed, going into a human body which has low iron, which already has gut damage and is already probably got leaky gut and issues there, is just going to add to inflammation. So what I've done in my case, and more than likely you had things in your body that bacteria was able to break down and create iron, is we're getting out of the body's way. If I just noticed the only supplement I use is B12, and even the doctor said, let's leave that. I inject it because I was told I don't have the part to absorb B12, the duodenum either. But B12 is a little bit different. I use magnesium at night because it helps me sleep and helps me go to the bathroom in the morning. But in truth, I have to be very strong to tolerate even one supplement going into my gut. I can feel my whole body being dragged down. And there's people who literally think they're going to fix themselves by taking supplements when the problem may not be iron. If you're low in vitamin C, problem. If you're low in magnesium, problem. If you're low in vitamin A, problem. If you have a damaged gut, problem. But people are trying to fix low iron thinking they're not getting the iron. And I think I'm a prime example that I'm not having iron supplements, I'm not having meat. And you fasted. You had nothing going in and your body was able to create iron, because I'm assuming it was iron stores. It wasn't just iron increased in the blood, because usually it's those ferritin stores, if they're down at 3.
Yes. The iron stores were my biggest problem. The other irons, the hemoglobin and the hematocrit, those were low, but the iron stores were dangerously low. And I just want to take a minute to look in the chat. Hi, Jackie is in the chat. We've got some questions. Tanya says, people tell me to eat spinach. I eat 2 Costco tubs to myself weekly. I've always been low. I look at my levels from 2018 and I was 21 in the ferritin. I became vegan in 2021, but I'm a Canadian. They just raised safety well to, that must be what? The iron.
I think she's saying they just raised the levels.
The levels.
From 30 to 125 is safe. From what previously was 12 to 125.
Yeah, and now I'm considered deficient. So, that's also another thing that we have to look at is, also how you feel. And then she also said, I can't go to True North. Well, you don't have to go to True North. That's just when I experienced healing and nobody really understood why. But I would like to just bring up a question. Let's see, I thought there was, and we could talk about some other comments here, but there's a question. How long did it take you to raise your iron levels on a raw food diet? Is it Tatiana, such a beautiful name. And so, Skye, go ahead.
Okay, so what I want to preface here is a lot of us go into, I'll do a raw diet to fix my iron. And I think it took me a year. I didn't go back to have a blood test till a year. But after 6 weeks, for the first time, all my markers in my blood were raising. And I think if anything's out, something's wrong with your health. And if we stop going, okay, I've got to do lemon juice and spinach, and look at it like, how is everything making me feel? Like, you might take your iron supplement and feel so terrible afterwards. And we've become so disconnected that we don't realize that that could be causing more of a problem. What healed me was this navigation of always feeling good. If something made me feel off, I had to reassess what that was. And it's not, as I said, like, my raw diet now is very different from when I was like completely near death. Like, it was literally just getting out of my body's way and giving it these fresh foods that when I ate were not damaging me anymore. And then the body just started correcting all areas. It doesn't necessarily mean the spinach and the lemon that I ate fixed the iron. I think the whole process of me having the raw foods, being grounded outside as well, that's a huge inflammatory response on the body, allowed my body to correct all areas. The bacteria was feeding, so there was no deficiencies because nothing was being pulled. More than likely, iron is becoming low because nutrients which are needed for iron are being pulled in different areas of the body. All the bacteria is not making it to help support iron production. Because these are all processed. You don't just eat iron and then it's just put into the stores. There's a whole enzymatic production going on with this bacteria and the gut in different areas. So if somebody has anything deficient on their blood test, they need to reassess their whole health. You cannot go, I will fix this with this. It does not work like that. Nature doesn't work like that. We don't.
Yeah. And also, I would say sometimes we tend to dissect things, right? So,
Yeah.
In our country, there's a lot of specialists. Go to a specialist for this one piece. We're all connected. It's a whole thing. And so I think that is, there's something to be said for that. And I would like to just say, whole food plant-based diet and rich foods rich in iron, which I also did, the spinach with the citrus or the lemon. And the reason that the doctors, even the whole food plant-based doctors, had told me that is because they said when you add vitamin C, a citrus, yes, a lemon, then it helps with the absorption of the iron from the dark leafy greens or your nuts and seeds or your beans and things like that, because the plant irons are called non-heme iron, and they aren't as absorbed as quickly or as heavily as the heme iron, which comes from the animals. But just because you have a flood of it, it doesn't mean your body is going to accept it. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and also every time they've tried to treat my iron deficiency with heme iron, which essentially is I've been on a higher meat diet, there's been a problem. And that, once again, everyone needs to understand the delivery system could be the reason you have low iron. You're damaging your gut. You're damaging your gut. You keep putting in meat, damaging your gut. You keep putting in a supplement, damaging your gut. And so, in fact, you're actually making the problem worse. And before you know it, you've got a secondary deficiency like B12. B12 could be the reason you're not absorbing iron next. So the only way to heal anything in the body is and what's so good about a whole food plant-based diet or a raw diet is you start to become whole when what you put in is whole. The body, it's like it knows. You put it in and it goes, I know you. This is so familiar. You're this is part of me, and it assimilates. Inflammation goes down. There's just too many different variables to pinpoint what is the actual problem. And even if somebody has, like I had an internal bleed, it's not as simple as the bleed caused the low iron. It's what caused the bleed. Why was somebody's body so disbalanced? And it all comes back into it comes back to finding yourself. And you said there's all these specialists. So we've literally dissected ourselves like specialists. Like the ophthalmologist is different to the chiropractor, different from the cardiologist. But in fact, the only way I fixed everything in my blood work was by loving me and giving me whole nutrients, that really taught me about this whole being whole, and that the body will always tip out if I start pushing it in. And I've been on magnesium supplements because as I said, they do help me. I was never deficient. They do help me sleep, and they do help my bowel movement in the morning. But I can even feel that pressure that my body's taking now, using something like that. It's just, compared to light, airy foods, it can be quite heavy. I did want to say my iron continued to increase for years. I've been on raw foods for 4 years, and then getting into the community, I started to see that everyone's like, fruit's optimal, fruit's the way, it's not veggies or greens. And I got really heavy into fruits and juicing, and my iron completely tanked. And I had one infusion last year, and since being on green juices and more greens and veggies again, which is what I crave and feel like, and it's all raw, my iron has stabilized. It's at 80 still.
Wow.
And that usually, as I said in the past, you can give me an iron infusion in 3 months. It's just completely bottomed out.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. So, I want to mention a couple things. So, you also want to be careful about too much calcium rich foods around, meal times, because they can inhibit iron absorption as well. Like, let's say spinach, which is high in oxalates. I know that's a big buzzword. And whole grains or legumes, different products like that, they contain something called phytates. And what I learned is that the oxalates and the phytates, they bind to calcium, making it less available for the body to absorb and to use it in some people. This isn't for everyone. You got to look at yourself and see what is, works for you and what doesn't. But I just want to say, since I brought up the phytates, so for those who are not familiar with phytates, I just want to touch on that just briefly. So plant seeds store phosphorus in a natural occurring compound called phytic acid. So when you eat plant foods with phytic acid, it binds to other minerals in your digestive tract, like calcium and iron, right? And it creates what are known as phytates. So the main type of foods that contain phytates are all these acid foods, including beans and lentils and whole grains and nuts and seeds. So that doesn't mean that phytates are bad. They are not bad. They're great. But they can reduce, because they can reduce the risk of cancer. They can help prevent heavy metal toxicity. They can act as an antioxidant, prevent kidney stones, all kinds of things, right? But for some people, I learned, who are at high risk of nutritional deficiencies or malnutrition or absorption issues, osteoporosis, which is what I am dealing with, and anemia and low iron, phytates sometimes can actually reduce the absorption of things like iron and calcium and zinc. So Skye and I may not have understood what was going on, but by changing the way you prepare the foods, it can help reduce phytates if that's something you might want to play with. So in raw foods, you're doing sprouting and you're soaking or maybe fermentation. Those all help destroy the acid on there and allow for increased mineral availability. And if you're cooking it, it's still a process. It's just finding what works for you. And when I came across that, I thought, oh my gosh, Skye, did you do something with yours? And by changing to raw, do you sprout? I mean, I'm curious.
So when I healed myself, there was no sprouts, there was no fermented foods. It was literally like I had to tap into and this is when I coach people, is what are you craving? If someone says I've been craving tons of beetroot and they've been forcing themselves to eat watermelon and lentils, is you once again are out of balance and you will have problems somewhere in your body. We have to somehow get in touch with what we crave. Just like all the animals out in the world that don't read nutrition, they literally just eat what they feel like. And then some days you'll see animals, which is quite strange, licking salt off a wall. It's not because they're like junkies. Their body requires sodium. So when people can be like, And I'm not saying, when I'm talking about getting in touch with your intuition and what your body actually requires, I'm actually saying is forget packaged stuff for a while. And this isn't forever. And I definitely don't believe it's forever. But for us to get into touch with what we need is forget everything in a packet, forget everything cooking. What if you could just sit there and snack on a veggie or a plant that grows outside? As if someone had thrown you out in nature and said, you're in a garden, you just eat what you need. Some days you'd be eating cauliflower, another day you'd be eating a mango. And I believe getting back to like sprouts and fermented foods and cooked foods is perfect, but you can't understand what your body needs when you're changing the structure of food that's feeding the bacteria in your gut. If you look at most people who heal themselves on a raw diet, like there's thousands, you can see them on my channel and Jillian's channel, is they don't know how they healed. But you find there's this story of loving what they're doing, finding themselves, and then having blood tests, and most of their problems have gone. And I believe what saved my life was me losing most of my memory and not being able to overanalyze. Because otherwise, every time you go to put something in your mouth, well, there's more like a pain in the cooked tomato. I have to cook the tomato. What deer is out there going, oh, I need to cook a walnut to, get rid of phytates? I think, and that's fine when you've healed and you're in touch with your body. But something that seems so simple is so hard. So the only reason I could do it was literally I had been through hell. I had no family around me. All I had was knowing that when I ate something in its purest form, I felt completely different. And that's all I had in my life. So I was, in essence, blessed, and I can share this, but the actual simple answer is the hardest thing, because everyone is so academic, when what I think people need and what I would love to do one day, and I talk about this, is have a place where there is an abundance of food outside and you're spending most time outside to reconnect with what your body needs. And then, as I said, after that is go back to your cooked food, go back to everything. But until you can understand the push and pull, because you'll find people who are unwell, it's not just that area. They'll then start complaining that, they have stress in their life from their children, or, there was a loss here, and you find there's a similar pattern everywhere. If you can find a way to be away from things that pull you in different directions, you'll find you'll heal in all areas. That's my experience. Like there was so many things wrong with me, and for my whole life, in 6 weeks it was gone. And I credit that to being isolated, being outdoors all day into the night, and just eating food in its freshest form, and music, because you can't use food as pleasure. You have to, I was struggling with connecting to things, and music really helped me with things like that. But it doesn't have to be music. So yeah, I'm a big believer in that is what heals and helps.
I love that. But I just thought it was interesting that maybe that happened accidentally, by, just understanding what happens in the body, and that maybe the phytates, because, not breaking it down, but maybe worked for you and you didn't even know it. Same with when you're explaining being in nature and how that's a gift. I mean, I totally understand that. And I would love to be able to go somewhere and just, be able to do that. Oh my gosh, I'd love to be a part of anything like that. But, when I was at True North, again, it wasn't just about food or just about fasting, like what you were saying. I had resting, I had journaling, I had to really decide, how do I want to spend this time and give myself what it needed in those other areas, right? I didn't beat myself up, doing these cardio, whatever, and you wouldn't want to do that fasting anyways. But the point is just gentle time that we don't usually give ourselves for healing, and I think that that's really important. And, I'm not 100% raw. I do eat cooked food, but I want to tell you, I'm starting to notice that when I eat something cooked, I have a different feeling than when I eat it raw, that I never was aware of before. It's been very interesting for me. It's a different, it's just not it's not that I'm not full, right? It's not about that. It's just the feeling. The feeling is different. And I can't explain it exactly, but it's really interesting to me. And I also recently started craving lettuce, and I've never craved just lettuce. And I'm like, God, I need some romaine lettuce, which is so weird to think about, right? Because it's
I
not
love
what we
that.
would think about. Yeah.
I
So
love that. It's like it's knowing you crave the lettuce and going ahead and giving yourself permission to eat it and love it, and maybe you eat it only, that's all you eat for 3 days, as opposed to then sitting in a space of it lacks this, it doesn't have this, I need this, because that's all stuff that's been taught. And think about the thing that healed me, and it's so amazing, is everything I taught was not accessible for me. All it was like being an animal. And I always try to bring things back to science because I know it helps people understand things. But when you're outdoors, the inflammation response on your body, and I want to say, so there's an interview on my YouTube channel with a person called Layla. Now, she was living on the earth, so she sleeps outside. Lindsay or Layla, you can call it either. And she was eating food from nature that they found or harvested, made their own bread, got meat, fished and stuff, and slept on the earth. And she had her first child out in nature, no help, and gave birth in pain. Halfway through the second pregnancy, she went fully raw, 80-10-10. So lots of fruits and greens. That baby, just like animals in nature, came out in the amniotic sac. It came out in what she described. So remember, this is different. She's sleeping on the earth. Her soles are on the earth all day, her bottom, her sacrum, she's sleeping on the earth, which is essentially what we're meant to do and what animals not domesticated do. The baby came out in like an orgasm. There was no pain like the first. And by the third child, she'd been raw vegan for 3 or 4 years. And the baby literally came out in something that felt familiar, like this orgasm type thing in the amniotic sac. And her husband was actually very traumatized by the second and third because of what he understood a pregnancy to be, because she was up within a couple of hours doing the washing, her body completely repaired. So we can go into the science, and you can replicate, which is never the same as actually getting the soles of your feet, your bottom, onto the earth. And that is that under a microscope, so everything around us, and when we endure, all of this is alternate currents. The earth and a human body is supposed to be a direct current. So you lock someone up inside and surround them with alternate currents, put their blood under a microscope, and it's stuck together. So it doesn't, and the more time you spend inside, the more stuck the blood gets together. Does that have an effect on iron? Hell yes, it has an effect on your whole body. But the other bad thing about it is when you've got an alternate current running the body and not a direct current, is the cells they have little gates, calcium gates, sodium gates, potassium gates, electrolytes, which let things go into the cell and out of the cell. What they note in people who are inside and not grounded is these gates just start shooting electrons and protons and things across it, and you become dysregulated. And also, it's very important in the brain that this doesn't happen, because this affects like thoughts and feelings and emotions, cravings, what we go eat. So it's so important that people understand that what healed me was the raw food got me up. And then as soon as I got up, I had this calling to literally be outside all day. If I couldn't sleep, outside under the moon. And the sun, they know now, the sun with the raw foods, especially fruit, activates like enzymes and hormones in the body, which really, there's a few they probably know about, but hasn't been studied enough. So there's this dynamic between healing and finding yourself. But also, when you say the lettuce, you knew you needed lettuce, is you could see you started to smile. Like it was something which was so innate and so much like, I love my body and my body needs this. And it's such a different concept than pulling out a packet of mac and cheese and heating up in the microwave and eating it and then sitting there thinking about how you need to buy a whole ton of things to fix your iron. Like, I think it's why I believe there's stages to it. I don't believe someone can wake up and just go and eat raw food and go outside. I believe there's like this finding yourself aspect to that connection.
Yeah, I love that. And I do grounding or And there's something too that I learned about that through an acupuncturist who studied Chinese medicine, and he kept saying, going outside when the sun comes up, it's not going to give you the rays, the UVB rays that people are concerned about when you get cancer. Those early morning rays, they're different. And by having your feet, I literally pushed gravel away and would stand there, and I would just watch the sun come up, and I would sing, "Here Comes the Sun."
I love that.
He even said, he said to me, like, it's okay. I know it's not natural, but it is natural for us even to have like our nipples exposed.
Yes.
Because it absorbs, and there's so much that's like voodoo, and I tried everything, and it really, really helped me. And it helped even with my sleep. It helped with my iron. It helped with my healing of my small fiber neuropathy and so much more. And it's because we are, like you said, we are in sync. We are supposed to be. There's a whole rhythm that goes into the sun going up and the sun going down in our digestion. When it's nighttime, we're supposed to sleep. And when we are, like you said, indoors and with these, LED lights and all this stimulant that isn't natural to us, it can affect us in so many ways. And so I just wanted to mention that. And you talked about cravings, and Tanya put in, it's not a question, but she said, I've been craving bread and baked goods, but somehow I feel I shouldn't just give in to all that all day. So would you like to say something to her about that?
Okay, so first off, I think that aspect of being inside and can make us want comfort things more. Also, the bacteria we already have dictates. So there might be something in the bread the body's learnt to get what I call backhand, which is, it would get it more efficiently from things like cauliflower or greens or tomatoes, but it's been in such absence and you haven't eaten enough of it to actually get what you need. So the body only asks for what it knows. It's like if it knows it can quickly get calories and sodium, which actually helps with hydration from pizza, it will send you pizza messages. So there may be something. Also, energy can come from like the sugars in the bread. What I look at with foods and cravings is what components come from the bread. And when you are going, I never suggest for people just wake up and go raw or even whole food plant-based. It's so much better to learn about yourself and get skills along the journey of finding yourself. So you might now, you're craving bread, right? So if this was me, I would swap over to something like Ezekiel bread or some sort of sourdough bread that I made. But also because when I think of bread, and this is mine, it's not soft. For me, it was always the crunch and the pull. Like that crunchy bread on the outside and the soft on the inside. So I usually, when I went raw, is what mimics that for me to get me across, because you're not getting the right cues indoors when you've been having all these foods which your body has the bacteria for, and you're wanting to move yourself into a space of connecting to yourself. I would, if it was me, because I said I like crunchy bread, I would be like, well, zucchini or cauliflower, and there's usually like a sweet or salty aspect to it. I might, if I want something more savory, put some onion powder on that, and you get that like crunchy aspect. And I also say to people, especially that I coach, is you don't have to completely cut out these things. It's best to let your body learn that it's not doing its best on that. See, I learned, I dry roasted some pumpkin and tomato and garlic after 4 days of raw. This is when I started, and I couldn't get up, and my heart was racing, and it took about, and my iron was low, so my body wasn't very efficient at the time either. It took me 4 days to get over that, eating, like just munching on veggies and fruits. And at the start, there was a couple nuts and seeds. I got rid of them about 3 to 4 weeks in. And then when I felt better and I've got energy, I steamed some cauliflower. And then I couldn't get up again. And the gift there is I learnt myself. I didn't have a book tell me. If something tells you to do something, more than likely the way human nature is, we will default off it. We need to experience it ourselves. So if it was me and I craved bread, I would still give it to myself in the form of something which is healthy. I would have veggies, raw veggies on the same plate and go from there.
Yeah.
And that's what I say is don't like, if you think that you're coming from a place of lack, you're not coming from love. We want love.
Yes, yes. And just to clarify, she says, no, I don't eat a lot of bread and baked goods. I eat a ton of produce. I think it's more nostalgic and watching my husband with his PB&J bagels, but I'm not sitting at home eating all the wrong foods. I eat a lot of whole foods and I make most things from scratch. So yes, but just the connection. I mean, I even experience that sometimes if I feel out of sync, and I'm watching my husband eat something that I don't eat, there might be like something going on. I don't know if it's nostalgic or if it's, in that moment. Sometimes there have been times when I'm like, not angry, but I'm like, why is it okay for you and not okay for me, right? This whole unfair whatever thing. And that might be because I'm tired or I'm missing what you're saying, Skye, the right balance of whatever it is that I think is in there. I loved what you just said about, you think pizza. It's not pizza. It's
Yes,
something
it's something
else.
in there.
It's something in there that maybe we're off, and it could be an electrolyte thing like what you said. I just find that fascinating. There is a question. Let me go back up. Let's see. The question is, what do you think about sprouts rich in iron like lentils and peas? So I mean, I'll just say for a moment, I started sprouting a while ago, and I think that that's great personally. What do you think, Skye?
So I love lentils and I love peas. And what I've learned about my body now is when I got into like, I'll just soak lentils and I'll like mash them up with maybe some salt and garlic, lemon juice, maybe a bit of miso, and make like a pate type thing, and then put it in sushi with some maybe carrot and stuff. I love it. I notice my body wants these like higher amino acid type foods when I'm training a lot, which I do a lot of Pilates and running. But for example, with these, I haven't had sprouts in about 2 weeks. But before that, I reckon for 2.5 months, I had lentils every single day. And what I want to say is it's not so much I want to share about the lentils as much as I'm eating what I want. And that's the space wherever you're at to do. Like I would rather somebody go, all I felt like was spinach for 3 days than go, I know this, 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 and this. And although all I wanted was spinach, once again, it's not pizza, it's spinach. But I made sure I had this and this. Every time you force your body out of love or out of balance, it will retaliate. It will retaliate in some way where usually you want something because you need more dopamine. As soon as you're out of balance, your dopamine drops. See, we're supposed to be driven by cravings and dopamine, by what the body requires. And then we have that pleasure sensation from the mango or the tomato, and that raises dopamine. We've been raising dopamine from breads and from pizza and from the association of, you might have had bagels with your husband. And so when your dopamine drops and you're really not in touch with your body, is your body will not just seek out the food, but it'll seek out the dopamine. And one of the things I had to realize when I first got well was my mom invited me, because I've been disconnected from my family, to go and meet her for coffee. And for the first time, I had to look at this situation as in, I'm going to this restaurant because I love my mum. I'm not going, I can't get anything. At that stage, I don't even think I was doing juices. I was literally just eating foods. I was like, this is a different experience, because I think I used to be so excited. I'm going to grab that caramel latte or that soy latte, or, it's skewed. So you really, and I do put down me becoming more awakened and enlightened from the food, but also because I spent a lot of time in nature. I think you start to reassess everything if you're more connected to yourself. So it's a matter of looking at, there's two things going on. If you're jealous of what somebody else is eating, it's usually you're out of balance. I would say more than likely it's a lot of time spent inside, where the brain becomes conditioned by what is indoors as opposed to outdoors. And then also reassess, be like, no matter what, and it's an empowering moment where you realize you're here for that person and that moment and that experience. And yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Sorry, I went from lentils to love, but I believe it's the more
That's
you
okay.
can feel love, you will go. And I'm not someone who ever says wake up and go raw unless you're really, really sick. And that is only if in rare situations where it's like stage 4 of something and you have to force your body through. But besides that, you're better off finding that connection to yourself.
Yeah. So just for a second, I mean, I have some sprouted mung beans just to show as an example, and I do really enjoy the texture even and the experience of eating sprouted versus, you know, the dry where, you know, you cook it or even in a can. I'm not saying, you know, I've never had that again, but it's like, it's an awakening, and it's been a really interesting experience for me. I do want to just talk to you. You said you soak your lentils, so lentils don't need to be sprouted. Is that right?
No, they don't need to be sprouted. There's a few things that don't need to be sprouted, but I actually think soaked lentils, or when they first get their little bud of sprouting, it to me really is reminiscent of what lentils taste like. They're a bit crunchier, but yeah, I just get the French or black lentils. I soak them at least for 24 hours. And then sometimes I'll then make I've got all 3 recipes on my page, on my YouTube and my Instagram. I think there's a bolognese there that I'll make the sauce and then like blitz through some soaked lentils. But yeah, I'll do a curry with them. And yeah, I find them really good. I do, speaking of things I did mention, I have B12 injections and magnesium. I do use enzymes and probiotics from Leucorona now, but I don't think they've changed my life that dramatically, except that I notice when I have a bowel movement that everything's now digested. So I got to a stage where things were coming through me exactly the same as they went in. And that aspect really does help that bacteria and the enzymes. But I'm missing my stomach too. So I don't have the enzymes being made. But still, I healed myself with none of this. So this has all evolved. I really feel like I had to earn being allowed to take things like this. I had never learnt to really understand that if you put me out in nature tomorrow, I would not only survive, I would thrive. And that takes a lot of fear away from who we are. We think we need a house. We think we need a drive-through. We think we need a pharmacist. And when you actually understand that, as long as you have a few bags of spinach and some fruit and some avocados and maybe some nuts and seeds for some people and outdoors, you'd be surprised what like finding yourself means. Actually, the best time of my life was my most broken, when I first became aware that healing. And I knew it at the time too. I knew how special it was to be as sick as I was, and then as well as I was. But the whole time, especially at the start, eating so light, I was so happy. You know, I think there's a real connection to love and happiness and nature and healing. And it's very hard for people to be like, well, love isn't going to heal my iron. I was you. But then I healed my iron through love. Like if people say, what was it that healed you? I don't often say raw foods as much as I say it was love. I got this ability to be like, I eat this tomato and I can feel that I'm feeling good and nourishing. And afterwards I feel energized. And if I chose at that point to eat a piece of pizza, I was only living to feel good for an instant gratification. And then I would have had to suffer and sit there and go, you're not good enough. You don't feel good from the pizza, and just that negative self-talk. And so it really was like, I always refer to it as my love compass. You know, I kept feeling where gives me the most love, and it kept being nature and fresh food.
I love that. I love that. You know, I recently learned about a couple that I guess there's going to be a movie coming out. It's probably out maybe in the UK around now, but it's supposed to come out in the US in about a year. And I think it's going to be called or something like The Salt Path. And it's this couple, and they had really tough times. He was diagnosed with some terrible cancer and a lot of illness, and you know, they had financial problems and all this stuff. And they basically said that, you know, the wife just looked at her husband and said, we're going to go and walk this salt path, which is over 600 and I think 20 or 50 miles. And they were out and they walked it, and it was not always easy. But do you know what? They made it, and they learned so much. Simply very familiar or similar to what you're talking about. They were in nature. You know, the elements sometimes were mean or hard. They didn't always have what they needed, but they kept going and they focused on that. And obviously they're doing well because they made a movie that's coming out. And it just goes to show you that we are so much stronger you know, as human beings than we believe. And I also think that stepping away from what we are supposed to do or think or be or all of this, and just being curious and think about, like, I try to think about when I was a little kid, when I was a little girl, that, you know, and I never saw this toy or I never experienced this, you know, riding a bike or walking in sand, you know, it's different texture. Even watching one of my grandbabies, when he learned to walk, he did not want to walk on the sidewalk. He always would pull me. You know, we're here in the desert, there's gravel and rocks everywhere. He always wanted to walk on the rocks. So I would walk on the rocks with him. And then I started to experience, like, what is that like? What is he experiencing? And it's just, it's a way to open up in other aspects that can heal us. And I just think that, gosh, I wish there was a way that we could all just not work and just go play in the forest.
I believe people, like, any fear we have, what I learned from, so before I got well, I'd become an alcoholic. My liver was failing. I had carers my whole life. My family now didn't want anything to do with me. So as much as I had money to stay in hotels, because of this FND, a lot of the time I just stayed outside. One time I was kicked out of a hospital and I slept hugging in air conditioning. And what I learned before I started this journey, and I think why I had so much trust in myself, is you'd be surprised what life gives you when you think you would have no one around you, and the kindness that comes from strangers out of nowhere. You could call them angels, but those people were probably just on their way to work and saw someone and helped them in some way, whether it was like food or a bit of warmth, and they went on with their day. And we are probably angels in other people's lives all the time, and we don't know. It made me realize I was never alone, and I never will be alone. It's the way and the concept of the world works. So there is fears, and I have them again now because I have my brain and my health. I have fears like I need to work, I need to, you know, get up even sometimes when I'm a bit tired. Whereas at the start, when I healed myself, I got to just listen to my body. And there was a great trust in what the universe could give me when I was so broken. And I don't know how I survived that first part, to when you flip that over and you only put these elements that nature makes in your body, and you start to see little ants crawl, and you start to feel the effects of earth, and you start to feel the effects of sun not burning when you don't have any chemicals going through your body. And that contrast, but also that trust that, I mean, I've been in a situation, there's so much to my story, where I lived in the bush for 2 days because it was a long story. I was having mental health problems, and there was SES workers trying to find me, and everyone was trying to find me. And you'd be surprised as to what is actually, as much as we think that would be scary, you'd be surprised as to how much you can find in yourself and the warmth from the sun. And I don't know, it's all part, although it's horrific, is the strength it then gives me. And people who are trying to find their way have been through hell. If you're watching this video at this point, I promise you it's more than your iron, whether it's you've been through hard times in relationships, losses. Only you know how horrible things can feel. And you can actually, every time you go to make a food choice and you don't know why you're still doing it and you feel so alone, you can remember what you've overcome and where you don't want to go back to. That's another driving force, right? Is you don't want to go back. And I think those thoughts are much better than using as a distraction that you think you're going to go down another rabbit hole of YouTube and something will fix you. The thing I always thought about was, has this worked in the past? How many rabbit holes have you been down in 32 years, Skye? You even went to university. How much of it worked? None. So I'm going to now just go with how things feel. And that was very powerful. And that's the thing I want people to do.
Yeah. And, you know, some people might call it intuition, but it sounds like, and I agree, being able to go in and really be connected to self is something that is, it doesn't, in this day and age, it didn't come easy for me, and I still always work on it. But if you get out of all of the noise, or if you try to get rid of the noise and just allow yourself to really be in tune and in touch, your body will tell you what it needs. And as far as iron goes, people might be watching this thinking, okay, what's the recipe from Jennifer and Skye, right? And it's not that it's a recipe. We wanted to share our experiences and offer, different ways to look at things, and different things that you might try and see where it takes you. Because my experience was the pill didn't work for me. The liquid didn't work for me. The paleo diet, which I tried also, didn't work for me. Nothing worked for me. And then when I wasn't thinking about that, because I was trying to heal from something else, and I wasn't eating at all because I was water fasting, the blood said, your iron stores are fine. It was just... So I don't know that we have like a written golden ticket or answer like that, but it just in a way to close today, Skye, I mean, what would you say to someone that's been watching, kind of looking for a recipe or a cure or something?
Everyone watching here, have the golden ticket, but it's not our golden ticket. So as you said, perfect, like we are here to show that it's maybe the answer isn't in that very expensive clinic or that very expensive expert. We seem to have found it when we had nothing. So you're just having water and nature. And I'm over here kind of just like sunlight, and I had nothing else around me, no specialists, no doctors, no medication, just some fresh foods. And they're different stories, but we found our way. And what I knew at that time is, when you make that decision to heal, is you have all your tools. You've collected tools. A lot of the tools that came to me was, I remember jumping in the surf when I was like 4. I'm going to do that again. Or I remember watching my dad. He always ate a lot of raw food and exercise. None of it was, I remember sitting in a lecture after 2 years of university and I learned none of it. All of it was stuff that I'd learned. And so I believe everyone has those tools. And tap into your tools.
Tap into your tools. I love that. Well, I just want to thank everybody who has hung in here with comments, questions, all the hellos, and just for Skye, thank you so much for, wanting to discuss this with me and share our experiences. I've really enjoyed, and I always do, hanging out with you and hopefully inspiring others.
Yes. And I just wanted to say, I am actually just about to jump on my weekly live if anyone wants to join over as well on my channel.
Very good. So you guys, you can jump on her channel and hopefully learn some more things. I know I learned.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Don't forget to eat your greens and give plants a chance. Come on, if you haven't learned anything, give plants a chance. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will